All advice given is for general information purposes. All legal cases are different, and you should seek the advice of your own attorney before acting or making decisions. No attorney-client privilege applies to communications on this show, and no attorney-client relationship is created by calling or writing in. Attorney Rominger practices only in Pennsylvania and maintains his primary office in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Hey, welcome. Carl Rominger here. 540-0580 is the talk line number if you want to call in with a legal question, you want to talk about something. Let's talk about the legal news updates. Well, the United States Supreme Court has not yet ruled on health care. We're keeping our finger on that pulse and reminding you that we'll have an answer by July. They go out of session here pretty shortly. So the amount of time that they have to render their opinion is falling. They're not going to render it in November, and they're not going to do it after the election. They're going to do it before the summer, so it's going to be fodder for the elections all summer long. I'm going to put myself out there again and say, I keep saying John Roberts would be the surprise vote if he went against the typical theory that he is going to be in favor of striking it down. I feel like he has written a few opinions in the past giving Congress broad power, and from his scholarship standpoint, to be intellectually consistent with some of his past opinions, he's going to have to say that Congress does have the power under the necessary and proper clause. If not the Commerce Clause, but most necessarily the Necessary and Proper Clause. But who knows? But that's my prediction. So if that's the case, then it doesn't matter what Kennedy does, who, of course, is the swing vote that everybody's got their eye upon. Also, if they strike down the individual mandate, we don't know if they'll strike down the whole law as a result or not. That's a whole separate question. The judicially conservative thing to do, and again, what you might expect to see is for some of the justices who want to strike it down, then saying, okay, we've struck down the portion that's blatantly unconstitutional. There are portions that remain that may be unworkable without the individual mandate, but we'll let Congress sort that out. Because, and this is important for all you talk radio listeners out there who love to complain about legislating from the bench. If a court has an option of striking something down as unconstitutional, but doing as little actual legislating as possible, that should be our preference, right? In other words, pick a route which causes the Constitution to be obeyed, but if there's work that needs to be done or things that need to be redecided, push it right back in Congress's lap. And the best way to make them rework it, actually, is to leave it without an individual mandate, but with everything else in place, because then it's unworkable, and Congress would actually have to sit down this time and read what they signed, read what they voted on, and maybe give us a real answer. Anyhow, those are my thoughts on health care. 540-0580 if you guys want to call me with your legal questions. We've got a Supreme Court justice here in Pennsylvania who had to, I think she tried to step down, but then the court went ahead and suspended her anyhow. I believe she has 4 felony counts. It has to do with campaign finance. If you remember, the Senator Ori out of Pittsburgh a little while ago had been found to have been running the justice's campaign out of her office, and it kind of made sense that this would be the next shoe to drop, and we'll see what happens there. But we now have a Supreme Court in Pennsylvania with 6 justices on it. She's still there. If she steps down, the governor could appoint somebody, or an election could eventually be held. If she remains as a member of the court but suspended, then we're going to have a 6-justice court for a while, because we have 7 justices on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, which means it's quite possible to get evenly divided decisions out of the court, which then means whatever the lower court below the Superior Court or the Commonwealth Court decision was would then be the one that's upheld. So that's going to be a little quirk of our system right now. And we'll keep you abreast of what's going on with her case as well. I think the word should be out in the street by now to all the politicians that you're going to have to obey the campaign finance laws, and you can't use your staff or other people's staff from the legislative standpoint to run your campaigns. I heard the governor say this proves that nobody's above the law. Of course, the governor declined to prosecute when he was attorney general the sister who was eventually convicted, and then which has also led to this set of charges. I thought that was a little bit of irony there. Anyhow, 540-0580, whatever legal questions you want to answer. You want to talk about a divorce? You want to talk about, an auto accident? You want to talk about your neighbor's tree branches hanging over your yard, an old right-of-way? The kids always cut through my lawn to get from from point A to point B? If I let them cut through my lawn, can I stop them eventually? Those sorts of things come up. Also, I just want to mention it is Armed Forces Day, and want to thank the veterans and active duty folks out there. Obviously, we do really appreciate what you're doing. And actually, you can see that even in the local legal system. We're developing veterans courts in a lot of the counties, which are designed to allow people who have been veterans and have done military service to get into a program that's designed to avoid harsh criminal convictions, particularly if part of the problems are related to substance abuse or PTSD or other things that may be directly or indirectly related to service. And I also see it just as a direct reward to the veteran that, you're going to qualify for slightly different treatment in the criminal justice system later on if you put your life at risk. And I don't see a fundamental problem with that. 540-0580. Call in. We'll talk. We're going to be on until 3 today. Of course, in the meantime, if you need to get a hold of us during the week, you need a lawyer, you go to romingerlaw.com, ROMINGERLAW.com, and we'll be able to get you on or in the office. Chris, you're on the air.
Carl, how are you?
Good.
Good. I'm glad you mentioned it was Armed Forces Day. Happy Armed Forces Day to you. First of all, I had a legal question that doesn't really relate civil or criminal law, I guess. I mean, I guess it is civil law in a way.
Okay.
In Chicago, they're having this NATO conference, and it's kind of been in the news, but it's also kind of been, I don't know, low-key, I guess, in the news.
Right.
And Chicago recently passed a law, a civil ordinance, I guess, that it's illegal to videotape officers when they're, officers of the law. I don't like calling them law enforcement officers, and I don't think they would like it either. But when they're actually doing their job, so to speak, it's illegal to actually videotape them. So YouTube videos coming out of Chicago for this NATO conference are very limited because of any type of, violation of this civil ordinance. My question is, does that? I don't know. It just doesn't sound legal to me. It doesn't sound like a First Amendment friendly kind of law. Is that legitimate? I mean, I'm reading this all over the place, and that Rahm Emanuel's okay with this. He's the mayor of Chicago. Let's remember, the guy that doesn't want to let any crisis go to waste.
Yeah,
there's a lot of weird stuff going on in Chicago, isn't there? I mean,
I haven't heard.
And I'm wondering if this is this a legal issue that for your show, or should I be calling Durgan with this thing? So
yeah,
anyway.
it was quasi Durgan issue, but it's also an issue. Listen, if the police, you can't interfere with a police officer. Let's start with a couple competing propositions here, okay?
Well, let's make it local. We just had a YouTube incident here in Harrisburg not too terribly long ago concerning what was billed as police brutality, and I mean, you could argue either direction how the media affected that, but that was social media in use. Citizens. There's a cell phone cam in everybody's hands. And we can hold everybody accountable for their actions. But when does it become interference, and when is it?
Well, that's what I mean. Those are the two competing values. So that's kind of what we have to do. Let's tease this out and look at the two issues. On the one side, police officers need to be able free to do their duties and not be physically or substantially interfered with in a way that's going to affect their effectiveness and not allow them to do their job. On the other side of the coin, if the police have no ability to be second-guessed, no ability to be monitored, then we're back to a police state, right? And we're back in a dictatorship, and we're back in a authoritarian regime. So the visible and public administration of justice is always important. It's sort of like you run into the competing theories of, secrecy in the grand jury issues versus a public trial. So here, if the public can't effectively see what their police officers are doing, and we literally make it illegal for the members of the public who are not interfering. In other words, if I'm 100 feet away with a telephoto lens, or I'm 20 feet away with my cell phone camera, or I'm a spy satellite, right, and I'm recording all this, how am I materially interfering with anybody? And I'm not. If the police are afraid that what they're going to do is somehow going to be misconstrued on the video, that's going to be a problem, because it's not how it's construed. It's what it is. And people seeing the video later can then determine who did what to who and how and whether it was done properly or not. And I agree that sometimes without the audio. And can you hold through the break for a second, Chris?
Sure.
All right, I got to go to break. Hey, Chris, we're talking about police officer videotapes and the right of the government perhaps to shut that down or not shut that down. And I want to come back to one other little unfair thing about the video, because I was saying it shows what it shows. Sometimes there's a problem, and the problem is this. Human beings don't always see what's actually happening. It's what they reasonably perceive that matters. So I can see scenarios where a police officer is unfairly held responsible, for instance, for a shooting or something, where the video clearly shows something, but to the human eye or is processed by the individual under the circumstance, what they legitimately thought they saw, or at least their brain caused them to think they were seeing, or however the image was processed, it isn't the case. So I'll use the analogy of when you're out hunting in the woods and you're looking around and you're pretty sure you can see, a deer, and then as the light comes up a little bit more, you realize, there's no deer there. That's just a stump with horns or something. And my point being is the way human eye perceives things versus how a camera might see them later. And we all know this from our cameras. Like even our cell phone cameras can see better in the dark than we can. That there has to be a little unfairness. But that said, I think overall the public's need for certainty that the government isn't running amok and isn't becoming a dictatorship weighs in favor of the cameras being open to the public and the ability to monitor the police being open to the public. And that's where I would come down on it. That makes sense?
It makes sense, but yeah, I mean, like I said, I only gave the Harrisburg example, to kind of make it local. I know we had an example on the Carlisle Pike with that street racer kid, and a few years back, and it's incidents like that you kind of wonder: is this somebody trying to make a platform for themselves, or sort of, they have an agenda that they want to address, that sort of thing. But this that I'm talking about specifically today, and it's interesting that you bring up perception, because that can be kind of, twisted either way as well, the perception. Because perception, as I understand it, is, an assessment of a situation based on experiential knowledge or past memories.
Okay.
Which is stuff that can be conditioned. So, you really kind of have to think about all this stuff. There's some mind-boggling stuff going on. If they're actually banning altogether the filming of any type of police action whatsoever, is that erring on the side of caution, or is that suppressing information?
That's suppressing information, clearly, and they will never win that, I don't think, if it's ultimately challenged. I don't think that the government has the right to restrict the ability of people to monitor and effectively create recordings of police actions or government actions in public. I mean, obviously we run into the next step, right, which is, well, it's a secret, counterterrorism move. And then, of course, no, it's the military. Wait, what happened to Posse Comitatus? So anyhow, we could go down that path.
I mean, they did already move, speaking of secretive, they moved the G8, which is a separate summit altogether, to Camp David, which is a totally secure location off-site. Instead of moving it to another city out of concern for rioting in Chicago, which it was scheduled for Chicago at the same time, it was moved instead to Camp David.
Camp David is so secure. So secure. It's the only place where the President of the United States is allowed to go out and about without his security detail.
Right. And then he can just pop under the border underground there to our little second underground Pentagon here in our own great state of Pennsylvania.
Site R. All right, my friend. Talk to you later.
Thank you very much for your time, Carl. Have a good day.
All right, bye. Mike, you're on with Carl Romans. You're answering your legal questions, 540-0580. What's going on, Mike?
Yeah, I got a question on the first-party medical benefits and auto insurance.
Yes.
My question is, if you have private health insurance, do you also have to have that coverage on your automobile insurance?
You must have $5,000. Every policy written in Pennsylvania must have the minimum $5,000, even if you have private health insurance.
Okay. Is it a duplication of coverage, though?
Generally, it seems like a duplication of coverage, but here's the deal. Your private health insurance company generally expects you in an automobile accident to use that $5,000 first.
So since I have private health insurance, then you'd advise that I only have to carry $5,000. So it's a comprehensive private health insurance.
Well, that's an interesting question. It depends if your health insurance requires indemnification in an accident, and and wants to subrogate their rights. So here's the interesting thing. Your own first-party medicals can never be recovered by anybody else. So if you have a $5,000 plan or policy coverage and you get in an accident, you have $100,000 in medicals, $95,000 can be paid by your private medical company, okay?
Right.
But they may say to you, hey, we want that paid back as part of any lawsuit. And you go to the other side and they only have a $50,000 insurance policy. Well, you may run into a problem that you're not going to have any money for lost wages or pain or suffering or anything like that because it's going to all have to go to pay back the medical lien from your private auto insurance company. Now, if you carried the $100,000 in first-party coverage, it would pay the entire bill, and that would leave the entire $50,000 free and clear for you to use for pain and suffering and lost wages. Okay,
I follow you. Now, one more question, if I could, please. A separate question. On a when you have a dead tree on your property,
yes,
is that something that, like the homeowner's policy wouldn't cover that, right? That's something that you should get taken down as soon as possible, or?
If you have a dead tree on your property and it falls over and damages something, some homeowners' policies may cover it, some may not. The real question is if you're aware that it's dead, and once you're aware that a tree is dead, you may start to have a duty to protect against that.
Correct. Okay.
So that's where I would say if you thought your tree is dead or dying, you probably have a duty to remove it. And the biggest reason would be if it falls over while you're having the family picnic and it lands on me, and I find out that you knew it was dead for 3 years, I'm going to be kind of upset.
Sounds good. Okay. Thank you for your time, Carl.
Although, Mike, I will tell you this. A buddy of mine used to climb up this tree to go hunting all the time. And then one year he discovered it was dead. And as I pointed out to him, it had probably been dead for about 5 or 10 years before that.
Oh, my.
All right.
Okay. Thanks for your time, sir.
Bye. 540-0580. Mark, you're on the air.
Hey, Carl. Hey, I got a question for you. Somebody in our neighborhood who likes to hit the alcohol.
Yeah.
Apparently, a while back, got in trouble with the law, hit a cop. He was put on probation. A little while back, got a DUI, put in jail for then also violation of parole. So is that why they haven't been able to make bail on the DUI? Because now they're under court order saying violation of parole.
Correct.
And the other question is then come the arraignment June 1st, doesn't mean they're automatically going to get out for the DUI until the parole violation is taken care of?
Correct. They'll be totally separate proceedings for all intensive purposes. Now, lawyer might roll them up together, but the long and short of it is the parole violation stands separately, and you have no right to bail on a parole violation. Okay, good. So in other words, they might be in there for a while. Might be in there for a while, which makes the neighborhood nicer.
Makes the neighborhood safe.
That's funny.
Okay, thank you.
All right, talk to you later. 540-0580, just here answering your legal questions. Keep this in mind. I know Durgan was talking about gun rights yesterday, and I just wanted to give everybody a little reminder. Even minor misdemeanors these days, minor crimes. You get in a punching match with your brother, you get into a shouting match with your girlfriend or wife, you could end up with a misdemeanor conviction that literally could disable you from owning a firearm for the rest of your life. A second offense DUI within 10 years, about half of those are of the right category to take away your gun rights for life. So just put this in the back of your head. When you or a friend or a buddy has a minor criminal matter, make sure you ask your defense attorney to clearly make sure what the collateral issues are with your gun rights, and ask them to put it in writing. I do get a little upset because once in a while I hear people say, well, it's as long as it's a misdemeanor, you won't lose your gun rights. And I want to say, well, wait a minute. If it's a misdemeanor 1 in Pennsylvania, you will. If it's almost any misdemeanor in New Jersey, you will. If it's a misdemeanor of domestic violence, and again, domestic violence doesn't mean you hit or punched or kicked or hurt anybody. It could literally be that shouting match I was just talking about. If it's categorized as that, a misdemeanor 3, mutual fray, which was you fighting with your brother or screaming at your girlfriend, could end up becoming a disabling offense for life. Now think about that. So you got to be really careful about that. Other issues you got to watch out for is driver's license issues. If you get picked up with a small amount of marijuana, you lose your driver's license for 6 months. So you pay a $25 fine, and then PennDOT takes your driver's license. Now, I'm not advocating marijuana, but I'm explaining that a lot of people, for a crime that's now viewed as relatively not serious, find themselves in a little bit of hot water, and it doesn't seem fundamentally fair, if that makes sense. So collateral consequences. Now, we're required, by the way, as lawyers, to give a immigrant, legal or illegal, information about how their criminal conviction could affect their immigration status. But we're not required to give you information about how it would affect your driver's license or how it would affect your firearms rights. So keep that in the back of your head. 540-0580. Bob, you're on the air.
Yeah, Carl, thank you much for taking my call. Hey, got a question about gun ownership. 30 years ago, I moved to New York down here, had a carry permit up there, and I have one here. I have a revolver that I brought down from there. Am I supposed to register that in Pennsylvania, or my carry permit cover that?
Okay. Repeat that again, because you kind of crackled there for a second.
Oh, well, I say 30 years ago, I moved from Pennsylvania to New York.
Right.
I brought a revolver down here with me. I had a permit up there, and I have one here. Was I supposed to register it here or something?
The state police won their argument that they can keep a database of who buys guns in Pennsylvania, that it's not a registry because they don't collect guns that come in with people when they move here, and that therefore it's not really a registry. And so part of the key to their argument of not being a registry is that they don't count guns that or don't keep track of guns that come in, what we would say, sideways with people when they move here. So that's a long way of saying, no, I don't believe you have any duty to register it.
Okay, very good on that. One other quick question. My son, he's applied for a permit to carry, and him and a friend have been going to a shooting range, and he was wondering if he can take my gun to the shooting range and shoot it without having his permit yet.
Well, the short answer is yes. The long answer is taking it there is the tricky part. It's got to be transported the right way.
In the trunk of the car,
not loaded. Keep the bullets in a separate container. But yeah, you can certainly loan a handgun to somebody else.
And he doesn't have his permit yet, but
we don't have to have a permit to shoot handguns in Pennsylvania, nor to open carry them.
Oh, okay. All right.
A little different than New York, huh?
Pardon?
A little different than New York, huh?
I don't know how it is now. It's been 30 years since I was up there, so our permit used to be for life, and now I guess they got a yearly or 5 years.
And was your permit for open carry or concealed carry?
Concealed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, my friend.
Oh, hey, thank you very much, Carl. Right. Enjoy your program.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Guys, I got to go to break. We'll see you in a minute. 540-0580. Correct. I cannot drive 55. And actually, most of the country can drive faster than that these days. Oh, they thought they were going to save a ton of gas. 540-0580. Joe, you're on the air. Hey, Joe.
Yes. I have a question that maybe you may or may not want to comment on, but I'm just curious. This concerns Representative DeWeese.
Yeah.
How does he start a sentence and all of a sudden, just out of clear blue sky, gets bail? They say it's a rare situation. Doesn't really happen that often.
Well, you can get bail, and I don't know who gave it. I don't know who tried that, which judge had that case. But the sentencing judge then has the right to give you bail. And if they refuse you, the Superior Court can do it. But I don't know. Do you know who gave him his bail?
No, but it was on the news last night that he already reported, and some other judge turned around, a higher court judge gave him bail.
Oh, Superior Court probably did. Yeah, Superior Court probably did.
I was just curious about that.
Yeah, well, here's the answer. The answer is the issue of bail. If you have a legitimate appeal issue, it would stink for somebody to spend time in jail and then ultimately prevail in their case, right?
True.
And I mean, that's the issue. But the reality of it is, once you're convicted, we got to weigh that out. I mean, he didn't commit any violent crimes. He's not going to hurt anybody, right? So that weighs in his favor for letting him out. But I'm not sure.
Okay, I was just curious. I just wondered if you had a comment on that.
Yeah, no, I'd like to know exactly how that happened. But if it's the Superior Court that did it, the judge there probably just kind of reweighed things and said that the trial court could have given him bail or should have given him bail. But
I think the news they said they're going to be Channel 21, so they're checking into it. There'll be more coming up in a week ahead.
Got it.
Thank you.
Well, we'll comment on it next Saturday when we know more.
Okay, thanks.
It's better to say little when you know none.
Right.
540-0580. Paul, you're on the air.
Hello?
Yeah, Paul.
Talking to me? Okay. Yes, hi. My question comes from a little blurb I saw about a month ago in the Patriot News about how Richard Trumka, the AFL-CIO, was endorsing Obama, even though many of his members did not agree with that.
Right.
And I'm wondering, has union endorsements ever been challenged, or shouldn't they conduct a poll of their own members before they endorse somebody?
That's interesting. The short answer is I think like any other organization, they're free to run their organization any way they want, right? Kind of, which isn't exactly true because they have all kinds of enabling laws under the federal labor laws. But let's just assume for a minute it's like any local club. Then the leadership should reflect what the membership wants to do. But I guess if the leadership consistently wants to just go out on a limb and say whatever they want, then the membership has to decide whether they keep them or not. So if you're a union guy, I guess the question you'd ask is, are my wages good? Is my health insurance good? Do I feel like I'm being protected? And do I feel like my union's doing all the things I want them to do? And then maybe I don't care who my union boss endorses. Or am I a member that's disgruntled and think they should not be playing politics at all? But then the majority would rule, right? So, but seemingly, there doesn't seem to be any internal requirement that they get permission from their membership to go out on a limb. It's just a question of how long will the membership tolerate that before the next election, and how interested is the membership in that.
Right. It's just you would think that they should. They're always talking about how democratic they are, and I was a union member for 27 years. But people, and there's a lot like me who would never vote for Obama, and we kind of feel that our rights are, being trampled on because we don't have a say.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all.
With compulsory unionism, you can't quit your job. You can't go, especially if they have a union hiring hall, you can't come out against them because you know where you're going to get sent on your next job. So it's kind of really unfair. We're kind of muzzled.
Yeah, and that is the coercive power that applies when you no longer have an individual relationship with your employer, right?
Right.
The flip side is when all you have is a individual relationship with your employer. Some employers are very big. Then they tend to abuse that power situation. So, I've heard people say, well, the union served a purpose, which was to equalize the worker, and now everything's better again. So we don't need that. I'm not anti-union by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not necessarily pro-union either, though. But I would say this. Anytime we've needed something to do something, I'm always skeptical when somebody tells me it's no longer needed.
Right.
Because there's a reason why it came into being in the first instance, right. And I'm never completely convinced that we won't swing back in that direction again, right. Because we're obviously capable of it once before. So I know I'm rambling a little bit, but I guess what I would tell you is it's unfortunate that the unions have become so political, but the corporations, right, and the shareholders and the big bosses and the unions and their leadership have all learned that they can manipulate the playing field by going to the politicians. And that's the sin on both sides of the house there.
That's for darn sure, right?
Right? That's the sin that they've both that the company, the labor and the corporate folks have committed is they keep trying to change the playing field on each other by manipulating the legislation. And frankly, when business decisions are made based on regulation, tax, or labor laws, then a lot of times business decisions are not made on efficiency and they're not made on growth. And that's my fundamental problem with that.
Okay. All right. Well, that answers my question. Thank you.
All right. Hey, take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
540-0580. Dan, you're on with Carl Rominger.
Hi, Carl. I just turned on the radio about half an hour ago, and you were talking about gun rights and things like that, so maybe you've already answered this question. I apologize if you did. have a number of handguns, 22 caliber target pistols, and some rifles and things like that, and shotguns that I bought years and years ago, like 50 years ago, 40 years ago. And to my knowledge, there was no registration or permitting at that point in time. Have I missed something? Do I need to have these guns registered?
No, Pennsylvania does not retroactively require the registration of any handgun. Only thing you need to do with a handgun is when you transfer it is to do it with the state police form so that they can then put it on their little registry that they just call sales list.
By transfer, you mean sell it to somebody?
Right, or give it to somebody.
Okay.
All right?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you're in the clear. That was, and I mentioned it earlier. That was the government's argument why it's not really a registry, why their little magic list, even though it's effectively an 89% accurate registry, because we don't require people to affirmatively register guns that they have in their possession that either were purchased before we started this or which were moved in laterally from another state. We don't have a registry because we don't require registration of the firearm.
Good. Then I'm not violating the law. Good. Thank you.
Well, right. Let me explain it this way. That's what the state police argued and wanted on, and that's what the Supreme Court said they could do what they wanted to do. I'm just hoping in the future people will pay attention to what the next couple Supreme Court judges. We're gonna have an opening on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. It looks like Ori Melvin's on her way out, and if that's the case, we need to make darn sure that we find pro-gun justices. All right.
Yes, sir.
Keep our ears peeled on that. 540-0580, Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions. Bob, you're on the air.
Yes, Carl. I had a question about the election.
Yes.
They redistrict Pennsylvania, and I remember that some court ruled that it wasn't constitutional or it wasn't legal the way they did it. But then when I went to vote, I used to be in Tim Holden's district, but I went to the election and I found out I was now in another congressional district.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just wondering if they did rule if the redistricting wasn't right, how I was redistricted anyway?
There was some redistricting done, but I'm not sure that the congressional district was the one that got found unconstitutional.
Oh, okay.
And I think it was some of the other districts in terms of like state reps and some of the other.
Oh.
But I'm not positive on that. We should check on that. Maybe during the break here. I got a couple minutes. I have a little break here in a minute. I'll Google real quick.
All right, fine.
What's going on, and we'll talk about it in the next 15-minute segment. Will that work?
Yeah, thanks.
All right, yeah, hang out. Yeah, there is this called gerrymandering back from maybe the guy back in the day where you create these districts. Listen, let's just face it. The Republicans and Democrats can agree on one thing, that nobody else should play in their sandbox. And, it's our 4 years, then it's your 8 years, then it's our 8 years. Hey, look how we set our committees up in Congress. There will be 8 Republican members and 7 Democratic members, so that the controlling the controlling party's flipped. Now it's 8 of us and 7 of you. Oh, you're an independent? Well, you're going to have to cut some deals if you want to get on this committee or that committee. The whole thing's cooked. Let's just be honest. 540-0580. I'll see you after the break. Welcome back. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions, 540-0580. Well, we were talking a minute ago about reapportionment, and the fella had said, what happened with that? Best I can tell, the Supreme Court struck it down back in January, I think end of January, maybe February, beginning of February. And then in April at some point, they readopted a preliminary plan, and then it looks like they're having votes on that. So it doesn't look like we have our final redistricting plan in place yet. So how the last election went and how things were redistricted and which portions were upheld or not is going to be something to untangle for another day, unless one of you out there listening happens to know all that. But the general concept, it comes back to one man, one vote, or I guess these days, one people, one vote, or something like that. But in the old days, you had, for instance, Chautauqua County, New York, to give you an example, was a small rural county on the edge of the state, but had its own representative, Amo Houghton, to Congress, whereas down in the city of Buffalo, with 18 times as many people had its own rep as well. And so they used to just skew things around. So when the courts decided that congressional districts had to be apportioned such that each person in the state and each person in each state had the same relative strength in the vote, that's where we run into a situation that as population grows, we have to redistrict because we have to recalculate the number of people in each district so that each person who would vote for a different level of office would have roughly the same power in their vote. Now, the politicians then go ahead and say, all right, you move the line over here and we'll put mainly Democrats in this district and mainly Republicans in this other district, and that way we can all be sure we win a seat. And then if one house is in control, then a lot of times what they do is they push all the Democrats into 2 districts or 3 districts, or all the Republicans into a couple districts to try to maximize their own number of districts to win. So, believe it or not, where you draw the line changes the Republican concentration versus the Democratic concentration. So usually when you look out your front door and you look around, if you're a Republican, odds are most of the people around you are going to be Republican, and vice versa if you're a Democrat, because people tend to have party affiliations that are somewhat related to where they live and their socioeconomic circumstance as well. Not strict rules, but magically it works out well enough on paper that we can find Democratic and Republican enclaves. We can also find areas that are truly mixed as well. My point is they manipulate that system to create these political districts, and it happens every 10 years because of the census. So it's high politics at its best. And that's why I always warn people, don't trust the politicians, because what they're trying to do is secure their own future. And magically the Republicans and the Democrats can all agree on one thing: keep us in power collectively, no third parties. 540-0580. Ralph, you're on the air.
I work at a self-serve car wash. Are you familiar with the setup?
I say self-serve car wash. That's where I pull in, put my quarters in, and the wand turns on and I start cleaning?
Yes.
Got it. Been there.
I was working in the parking lot one day and noticed a customer using one of the foam brushes without putting money in the meter. And I requested that they put money in the meter to use it. It wasn't a public service. I expected compensation for it. And after several requests, she continued to ignore me, so I told her off and asked her to leave. 10 or 15 minutes later, a local policeman comes back and wants to arrest me for disorderly conduct.
For what? Telling her that she had to pay?
No, he didn't like the way I told her to leave.
No. Well, let me ask it this way. Without using the actual language, because I'm afraid we can't use it here on the air, how did you tell her to leave?
With several expletives.
Yeah. Here's the answer. Who cares? It's not the crime of the century, nor do I think the officer should be that upset about it. And what's he want you to do? Give her a sticker? Give her an award for stealing from the company? On the other hand, my advice in the future would be simply call the police yourself and report it as a theft of service.
The response time usually is longer than the abuse of the customer.
Right, and I understand that. So you got to get the license plate number, snap a cell phone picture, and call it in and report it. Obviously, that sounds like the officer's not going to be going out of his way to help you. It sounds like he's somehow decided you're already in the wrong, right?
He has prior experiences with the car wash, and he doesn't like the way it's run. Could he have arrested me for disorderly conduct on my own property?
Well, theoretically, yes. Because it's a public place. I mean, even though it's your own property. Right, it's open to the public. So you can get disorderly conduct in the Walmart, even if you own it, I guess. You can get disorderly conduct. Yeah, short answer is yes. Long answer is it adds a little bit of an overlay. But trust me, that would be dismissed in a heartbeat in a court. Now, if you can't go off the handle either. You can kind of sympathize with me if I tell you, there's different levels of appropriateness. And, you're not going to be able to scream racial epithets and
I referred to her as a bimbo.
Yeah. So I don't see that as a terribly offensive, nor is it particularly, it's not racial, it's not religious, it's not. So my thought of the matter, though, is you're just going to have to you've got a constabulary who's not going to be supportive of you in these things. And so my practical answer is, while you certainly may have the technical legal right to chase people off in a very rude manner, it's probably going to work out better in the long run just to get their license plate number and make a police report on them.
All right.
All right?
Thank you.
All right, no problem. Yeah, it's always fun. It's always more fun to run around screaming at people than it is to go over and write down there. Although, actually, if you do it very efficiently, I can imagine having a little fun. Just walk over with you, snap a picture of the person, scribble down their license number, or take a picture of their license plate. When they ask what you're doing, you say, well, hi, I own this place. And I really appreciate the fact that you're using my equipment without paying for it. In fact, what I'm going to do is bill you for it, or you can pay now, or I can call it into the police. Now, I guess the only other scenario I could think of is maybe this guy's upset because she's not going to put quarters in while the brush is, she's not going to run the brush, but she's eventually going to put quarters in. I mean, I don't know where that, Shane's nodding his head. He must do that. So maybe that's the theory. I'm going to get some free brushing here in real quick, and then I'll put some more quarters in. Well, that just makes you a deadbeat. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the answer on that one is. I guess technically you should be, or I think maybe it's post a sign that says car wash equipment shall not be used unless timer is on or something like that. That way it makes it clear to third parties that you can't just use this equipment when the timer's not running. That way it's clear, it's posted, and then later when the person goes, well, I was going to put quarters in, or I had put some quarters in and I was going to put some more quarters in, you can point at the sign and say, no, you're on notice. So I hope he's still listening. Maybe that'll solve his dilemma. The other thing would be to install some nice security cameras there so that you could just pull the footage off and make sure people know. Gas stations seem to like that. And drive-offs are a big problem, and they... All right, guys, I got another hour coming up here, so we're going to take a quick little break, 540-058, and when we come back from the break, we'll answer your questions. Of course, if you ever need a lawyer throughout the week, you go to Rominger, Rominger Law, RomingerLaw.com, or you can call us at 241-6070. That's 241-6070. I will see you guys in the next hour live answering your questions.